Hi, my name's Serena, and today I want to present to you about my survey that I did about the Center for Undergraduate Learning and Enrichment, also called CLUE, at the University of Washington. So a little bit of overview. The purpose of my survey was to validate, elaborate, extend, and explore results from my previous field and interview studies. From these previous studies, I've refined my design question, which is how can we improve the structure and atmosphere of CLUE for UW undergraduate students to increase efficiency and create a better study environment. This design question motivated my survey research to further explore students' feelings towards the current aspects of CLUE and the current pain points. So some background. From my previous research, the main pain points that I found were the noises of chairs moving, confusion between sections and also the signage of those, and frustration around the long wait times for tutors. So to address these themes, I based my survey around some research questions, the most relevant being, to what degree do students find the noise of moving chairs disruptive to their studies? Do students find it important to sit in the correct section of CLUE, and how does the signage impact the difficulty of sitting there? How do students generally feel about the wait times for a tutor at CLUE? How disruptive are each of these issues relative to each other, and can my results from my field and interview research studies be generalized to a larger student population? So my method, I use Google Forms to conduct my survey. I used this because it was the most familiar to me. I distributed this form through 4 different Facebook groups, and I got 23 participants. They were all UW undergraduate students. I did screen out one UW graduate student. There were 11 questions on my survey with multiple choice, ranking, rating, and one open-ended question. So a little bit more about my participants. There were 8 first year, 11 second year, 4 third year, and 0 fourth year or above, and I did screen out one graduate student. So this graph is derived from my demographic questions, and it shows the frequency of CLUE attendance in each grade level. So almost half of the participants said that they attend CLUE less than once a month, which was not my primary user. I originally wanted to only look at users who attend CLUE more regularly, but I did decide to include those who attend less than once a month because they have been to CLUE before and have some knowledge about the atmosphere and issues at CLUE, but this is a limitation of my survey. Now I'd like to share the results of my survey. So based on my interview result that chair noises were disruptive to student studies, I wanted to further investigate the severity of the disruption in my study. So the relevant question here was a rating question asking how disruptive to your studies are the noises of chairs being moved. The results, as seen in this graph of frequency versus rating, shows that the noises are pretty disruptive, with 74% of participants responding that the chair noises were at least somewhat disruptive. In addition, 30% of those participants responded that the chair noises were very disruptive. Clearly, this is a significant issue that needs to be addressed, which confirmed my field and interview study findings that this was a very severe pain point, and it also gives an insight into the degree of disruptiveness. In a few more slides, we'll look at how these results compare to the severity of the other pain points. So the second main research point for my survey was about the signs indicating the different sections of CLUE. This graph here displays a correlation between how important the participant thought sitting in the correct section was and the helpfulness of the section signs. Surprisingly, only users who think sitting in the correct section is not important at all answered that the signs were unhelpful. Most participants thought that they were helpful. About 91% thought that they were helpful or very helpful, and 0 participants answered that they were not helpful at all. This contrasts slightly with previous interview findings that the signs were often unnoticed and unhelpful in finding sections, but generally this seems to be less of a pain point than I previously thought after my interviews. The third main research topic of my survey, based on my previous findings, was the long wait times for tutors. I found that people were very frustrated in my interviews, so I wanted to further elaborate and see the severity of this pain point as well. So this graph here relates participants' rated feelings about tutor wait times to the times that they typically attend CLUE. Overall, 43% of participants responded that wait times were frustrating or very frustrating, while only 17% responded that they were content or very content. This curve is clearly skewed towards the frustrated side of answers, which confirmed my previous research that wait times were a pain point. I originally thought that time of day would greatly impact users' feelings about wait times, but from the data, it doesn't seem to have any significant impact. However, this data does elaborate on previous research by showing the severity of the problem. Finally, I wanted to understand the importance and relative severity of each of the pain points identified in my previous research, so I used a ranking question in which the participants rated each of the issues on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the most disruptive and 1 being the least disruptive, and also an answer for that they had never experienced that issue. So as you can see in the graph, the most severe pain point with the most 5s and 4s is actually the long tutor wait times. This was surprising because in my previous research, in my interview study, I found that the noise of the chairs was one of the most severe problems. But actually the chairs being moved was the second most severe in this study, with the second most 5s and 4s. And surprisingly, contrary to what my interview study led me to believe, signage was actually seen as mostly non-disruptive. This ranking of pain points is very important when prioritizing results and recommendations, and gave me a much better, more elaborate view of the severity of these issues that I found in both my previous research and my survey. To make some recommendations off of the results that I got from this survey, to address the most severe pain point first, I recommend looking into different ways to reduce tutor wait times. This could be looking into hiring more tutors for all time sections, especially because no time section was more of a pain point than the others. I would just recommend looking into hiring more tutors for all of those times. Also looking into stricter rules on how long tutors spend with each student at a time, because sometimes tutors spend too much time with one student and then the wait times get longer. Looking into how to increase the distribution of that time. Secondly, the chair moving noises. This is the same recommendation that I made in my interview study. It's a simple, actionable recommendation to place felt pads on the bottom of chairs to limit the noise when moving them. Finally, for signage, this wasn't as big of a pain point as I originally thought from my interview studies, so the recommendation that I make here after my survey is just to continue a consistent use of section signage, putting the signs out in the same place at the same time. Some next steps with this research, I'd love to implement these recommendations and then reassess the feelings about the noise level and wait times to see if the feelings improve about noise level and if the wait times go down. I'd also really like to do some research with the CLU administrators and look into the tutor hiring process to see the difficulties and pain points surrounding that and why more tutors are not getting hired. I'd also like to do more research with tutors themselves, ask them how do they manage their time with students, how do they distribute that time evenly, and also asking about their feelings about the questions that students ask them, and about the content and how they go about helping students. A little reflection about my survey study. My participants were unfortunately not mainly the primary user group. Next time I could make sure that the participants were a little more what I wanted them to be. I would go to distribute the survey directly at CLU so that I could guarantee that those users were regularly using CLU and also that the issues, the pain points were fresh in their mind at that time. It was surprising to me that I uncovered that signage wasn't really as confusing as my interviews led me to believe. It wasn't as big of a pain point, and also that long wait times for tutors were a much larger problem, even bigger than the chair noises, which I originally thought was the largest problem from my interview studies. The most fun part of this was making the graphs and playing with the data in Excel and getting to see the correlations between different sets of data that I normally wouldn't have. And yeah, that's my survey. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned more about CLUE and about students' feelings about the aspects and some of the pain points surrounding that. Thank you.